Yasmin is a board-certified holistic health coach who helps women in their 20s and 30s achieve their optimal health. Her aim is to make natural and healthy living easy, quick, and delicious through coaching, cooking classes, fitness workshops, skincare lessons, etc. She is the founder of MB Muslima magazine, a global community magazine for Muslim women. She graduated from both Montclair State University and the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. She left a successful job in a marketing agency world to do the work she does. Okay, so please help in giving a warm welcome to Yasmin.
جزاك الله خير نرمين. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. So, I'm actually very blessed to be here today with all of you. Alhamdulillah. This is actually my second time coming to speak to you girls, but we have a better turnout now. Last time it was on nutrition, this time it's on marriage, so I can understand. It's a hot topic and a very important one. So I'm humbled to be here, alhamdulillah. I have a group dua that I want to go through with you before I begin. Inshallah, it's long, but it took me a little while to put it together. I think it's very fitting, and I know sometimes when we get into group du'as, it's so easy to just say Ameen, but I want you to really listen. And I tried to include things that will kind of apply to you regardless of where you are. And, before I begin my talk, too, I'm going to ask a couple of you to raise your hands so I could know, what the, spectrum of our audience is in terms of where you kind of are in this marriage process so that I could better serve you, inshallah. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make this a gathering of action. May He subhanahu wa ta'ala help us remember marriage is not an end, but it is only a means. At the same time, may He, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, remind us that marriage is a very special means that has a huge benefit in allowing us to reach our true end, inshallah. May He grant us rahmah, mawadda, and sakina, or mercy, love, and tranquility in our current or future marriages, inshallah. May He help increase us in gratitude as women, inshallah. May He allow our marriages, current or future, to be a bridge to Him, not a self-destructive ship traveling against Him. May He open our eyes to see that the biggest impact we can truly have is within our homes, and that has a big global impact. May He open our hearts to true, unconditional love that accepts, admires, forgives, appreciates, and loves openly. May He open our eyes to the lies of the unrealistic love that has no depth or truth, as it lacks definition in the most deep and the most true, inshallah. May He heal our hearts from the wrongs that it has been exposed to, whether it was, fantasy stories, unrealistic tales, or things that are inappropriate. May He give us the gift of action and remembrance when we face the situations in real life that we speak of today, inshallah. May He repel us from seeking perfection in ourselves, our current or future spouses, our current or future children, and may He allow us to only seek perfection in Him. Lastly, inshallah, may He remind us that ثُمَّ إِنَّكَ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ لَمَيْتُونَ. Verily, indeed, after this we're going to die. Ameen, Ya Rabbil Alamin. Okay, so just out of curiosity, how many of you don't really know where you are in the marriage process? You might want to get married, you're not really sure, but there's nothing really set. Okay, how many of you are in the process of getting engaged? Okay, I wonder how many of you are engaged right now? Okay, well, I know the rest of you aren't all married. Okay, how many of you are married? So what are the rest of you? All right, do you guys want to try this activity with eyes closed? Let's try that. Can everyone close their eyes? I know when I tell... I know when I tell groups to do this, they don't actually close their eyes, but I'm serious. So close your eyes. I'll wait. Guys, there's like 3 of you. If we could settle down and do that, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so how many of you, are kind of just, trying to figure out what you're doing in terms of marriage? Okay. And how many of you have an interest or, pursuing someone through your family and possibly might get engaged? Okay. And engaged, we have one, unless one of the ladies that walked in. How many of you are engaged again? Okay. And how many of you are just not sure? Okay. So, yeah.
What do you mean by not sure? Like, there's nothing like you're planning on?
Right, it could be, or you're not really sure if you're looking or things like that, or you're, not sure, if you'll finish your education first. Kind of just confused about the whole process. Assalamu alaikum. Okay, so jazakallah khair, ladies, for that. So, alhamdulillah, I've been given a good amount of time. I do want to leave a good amount of time, too, for questions. Inshallah, after I kind of talk and warm you girls up, I'm sure you'll be, more likely to talk, and I'm sure there are papers that people could ask questions if they're embarrassed. Okay. So the very first point, and I have 18 points for you, how I usually like to relay information to people is in very short, actionable things that you could do that are inspiring and that you could remember, so there's actual points there. Before I even begin with the points, though, I want to share a little bit about myself. I'm not actually married. I'm engaged. I have been since September of 2011. And when I received this invitation, I was thinking, subhanAllah, there could be so many different people that could be so much better on this topic, maybe someone who is married. But then, I realized that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really puts people, uses people as a tool. I'm a tool, you're a tool. In attaining what he wants to attain in this world. And, although I'm not married myself, this is a very important, topic to me personally, I'm sure how many of you have parents who maybe aren't in the most loving of relationships? A lot of, and everyone might not want to raise their hand if there are other people, I'm sure there are, but a lot of our parents, how many of your parents are immigrants, for example? Right. The way that our parents got married was a lot different. They didn't really seek to find someone who is compatible with them, personality. I'm sure there are people in here who have parents with really awesome relationships. But the thing is that a lot of us have been exposed to 2 things. We've been exposed to, this fantasy, movie-like, someone's going to save you type of love that, isn't real, doesn't exist, and isn't, sustained within, the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then, also exposed to, maybe growing up with 2 people who are really awesome, but maybe don't really, have really strong love emotions, that you probably desire for yourself. And, the good news is that Islam really has such a beautiful model for marriage, that really embodies both things, and that's what I want to share with you today. And, my own parents, they're wonderful people, but, there is a lot of clashing and a lot of things I saw growing up that really made me interested in this topic. And as Nermeen said, I work with women all the time as a health coach, helping them with different things from nutrition, fitness, stress relief, things like that. But, within my health practice, when I work with a client one-on-one, I kind of see every different aspect of their life. So we do talk about their marriage. We do talk about different things. And, now, over like the past 2 months, I've narrowed it down to only 20 and 30-year-olds. But when I first started out, I worked with people as old as 50. So, it did give me a lot of experience kind of seeing, what it's like, whether I was working with like a mother who's a stay-at-home mom or someone who's really busy and juggling things. My clients range from both Muslim women and non-Muslim women, so kind of seeing the marriage dynamics on both spectrums. So it really is interesting. And even through MB Muslima, my magazine, I can't remember the month, but several months ago we did an issue specifically on marriage and love within Islam. It was like the most popular issue. Surprising, right? But the thing is that, it really helped me realize how important of a topic it was, and I also got to really interact with some of my readers and writers who, have a lot of experience within that. So, as I said, I dropped water all over myself. As I said, I have 18 points. The first point is a really, really important one, and it doesn't just apply in marriage, but it'll apply in your schoolwork, it'll apply, in your work life, it'll apply with your children, it'll apply everywhere. And it's losing the idea of perfection. How many of you here would say that one shape, form, or another, whether it's physical appearance, whether it's how you do in school, whether it's work, whether it's your family responsibilities, would say that you feel the pressure to, perfect everything you do? A lot of you. I come from Egyptian parents. You come home with like a 99, you're asked why is this not 100? And I'm sure it's the same for, I know we have many different ethnicities here, but, it's very prevalent, especially within a lot of our cultures. And, it comes from a very good intention of wanting, our people to strive and to be, successful and things like that. But it's also very, very problematic. It really is, because the thing is when you're always trying to seek that perfection, it's really hard to ever feel contentment. Once you achieve something, it doesn't even matter. You're on to the next thing. Once you achieve that, you're on to the next thing. Literally, we turn ourselves into these rats with, just running around in circles. And that also, if you're that way on yourself, I really realized this more so when I got engaged, just because the more you seek that within yourself, the more you're going to seek that within another person, and that's very, very dangerous, and really, and trust me, some of you, I think there's a few of you here that know me, maybe on more of a personal level, but, even people who I'm very close to, will know that, yeah, I do strive for many different things, but really within I'd say the last year or so, I've really let go of that idea of, trying to achieve that perfection, because it's very dangerous. It hurts your iman, even outside of your iman. It's really, really bad. And you'll find, subhanAllah, when you lose the perfection, it's not about being lazy or not caring or not achieving things. You actually achieve so much more, because you're so focused on being grateful for what you have. You're being kinder to yourself. So you're actually appreciating what you're doing, and it empowers you to do more, versus when you're all crazy on yourself. You guys know what I'm talking about. It's finals right now, but my dua is with you. And the thing is you'll never, if you're given the best spouse in the world, you're not going to be happy if you're seeking perfection, because the only perfection is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The number 2. And this could apply, if you're someone who, maybe you're looking to get married, maybe, your parents don't want you to get married until after you graduate, whatever the case may be. If you're already engaged, or even if you're married, this should apply. And, it comes from the sunnah of our Prophet ﷺ. And it's the idea that 3 things are really important, when seeking a spouse, or even when, examining your current spouse and just really appreciating them. And, that's their deen, their akhlaq, their personality, / your compatibility. Those things are so important. Physical appearance is important too. As we all know, there's a hadith of our Prophet ﷺ. A companion came to him and wanted to marry, a sister at that time, and he asked, well, did you see her? And he said no. And the Prophet ﷺ did not want them to get married until he did. That shows that, we do have a physical side to us, and it's very important to have that attraction. But, it shouldn't, if there's no deen, there's no akhlaq, and there's no compatibility, attraction shouldn't be something that, goes there. Because the thing is, we all just like Hassan al-Basri said, with each day that goes by, a part of us is gone, and even with our appearance, that decreases over time. And the thing is it doesn't really help when, you're in a situation where you're with someone for a really long time. Appearance is not going to be something to kind of sustain you guys together. So that's really important. But at the same time, know that it's okay, and it's important. And a lot of times, too, when you really are compatible with someone and you really love their personality, this is even psychologically proven in science outside of Islam. You see that person in a more beautiful way. They literally become more physically appealing to you. SubhanAllah, it's so amazing. And, I'll share a personal story with this one. So some of you might know a little bit more about my personal life. My fiance is actually a convert. He's a wonderful brother. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect him. I come from Egyptian parents, so it wasn't the easiest process, between the time I think that he first approached my father to when we actually got engaged was, a decent amount of time, for, the fact that, my parents, that's something new to them. I'm their first daughter, the first daughter to get married. Some financial issues, things like that. I mean, we're 6 months or so apart age-wise, but, I graduated and finished school before he did. He's actually finishing his student teaching right now, so make dua for him. He teaches in Elizabeth. Really good teacher from what I've heard, alhamdulillah. But the thing, though, is both of my parents, they came here. I actually was born in Egypt, and I came here when I was 11 months, so literally, Jersey girl ever since. But, Assalamu alaikum. But when, when he first approached my father, my father really loved him as a person. He has that personality that people really love him. But at the same time, it was still hard for my father. He, in terms of his family, and I'm sure, as you know, especially some of you that come from, cultures that are very, very heavily tied and, family and things like that. I'm sure there was just a lot of pressure, just wondering, if this was okay. And I'm sure, I know there were times that I think he actually resisted, meaning my father, but something beautiful that I found out, which my father didn't actually share with me, but my fiance later shared with me, was, my father told him that, how could I not accept you if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has accepted you? Meaning that, he accepted the religion. And, that really, really touched me. I don't know that my dad will ever tell me that, some of the Arab fathers have a hard time expressing themselves, They come off as tough, but, they really just want the best for their daughters. But do we have, if you don't mind me asking too, do we have any converts in the room? I'm just wondering. Okay. Assalamu alaikum. I love you guys. Seriously, you're awesome. But I'm only asking too, and, just because I know, especially for convert brothers, and I'm sure, sisters have their struggles too, but the issue of marriage sometimes comes difficult too. So I just want to, kind of know what our spectrum is. But the idea here is that deen and that akhlaq is really, really important, and I think, does that mean that every parent is going to let you marry someone based on that? No, it's very difficult. I'll say that Muslim parents, unfortunately, make it really, really difficult for their children to get married. How many of you would agree with that or kind of have personal experience? Man, I saw some hands shoot up. The idea is that realize this. If Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is bringing you some sort of difficulty in your life, meaning you want to get married but there's a resistance, if it comes in the form of your parents, realize that, again, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala just uses people as tools. Don't blame your parents. Do I think that a lot of parents are sometimes very unreasonable with their children, meaning they want, people who are crazy well financially off, these unrealistic things that don't exist? Yeah, I think there's a huge problem there. But I also think that sometimes emotions get the best of people. Sometimes, I've seen experiences with friends or just people I know within MSAs where maybe they get to know someone, get a little too emotionally attached, then go to the parents, and then the parents don't agree. Things like that, they're tricky. But if you truly in your heart believe someone has deen, akhlaq, personality, it's not just a really superficial type of thing, I would say be patient with it, and being patient doesn't mean nagging on your parents. Being patient, means, making istikhara, really relying on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, realizing that it might not work out, realizing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has the best of plans for you. We did this really long dua, and, one of the first things was the fact that, marriage is a means, not an end. So that's really important. Number 3, I think, is really important, specifically for women. So far, the idea of deen, akhlaq, personality, compatibility, that applies to males too. But number 3 is the idea of accepting yourself. I can't tell you how many women, even though, Islam has liberated us from this, so many of us have a really hard time accepting ourselves, whether it's, physically accepting our, looks, accepting, where we are in life, accepting what we've accomplished. A lot of us, and, I won't say everyone because there's people that don't deal with this, but, within my own experience through my work and working with different women and, doing all these different things, and even during my undergrad, I did a lot of stuff on, body image, and things like that. A lot of women just don't accept themselves, even though, they have so many things. They're beautiful, they're talented, they're smart, but, maybe they have been told, through the media, that they haven't. Or, unfortunately, there's a really ugly spiral that happens within women. Sometimes, mothers don't really accept themselves, and that passes on to the daughter. And that's a really ugly trend. And the thing is that you need to accept yourself. A husband is not going to help you accept yourself. If there's a difference between being vain and obsessed with yourself, kind of like what we see on the media, and a difference between realizing that it's okay to, be happy with your appearance. Because the thing is you're going to be raising children, inshallah, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses you with that. And it's really important that you kind of have that confidence, not that vain confidence, but the confidence that's really sure in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And you'll find that you're going to have a really, really hard time, appreciating, your husband or your spouse if you can't, accept yourself. No matter what they tell you, if they praise you, if they tell you this, if they tell you that, it's not going to really matter if you don't believe it. Yasmin Essa puts it perfectly, even though it's not on that specific point. She says, never go to someone, waiting to be filled. Your filling comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't go empty-handed, to someone waiting for them to fill you. You get filled from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then you go and you find that you really enjoy people so much more. And this kind of, goes into my number 4, and it's getting over the idea of being saved. Alhamdulillah, as Muslim women, I think, we deal with this less than, a lot of other people, just because we kind of have something in place. But I still think, growing up in the West and being exposed to, different music and different things and movies and all these fantasy things, it's very hard for us to, it's almost like we want to adapt to that, to Islam, versus realizing that Islam comes within itself with this beautiful, awesome relationship, and, it fixes all the problems. I'll tell you another story. I think I was in 3rd grade or something. Some girl came up to me in gym class, and she was just like, Sheena is Muslim, and she was like, so you're Muslim, right? And I'm like, yeah. And then she was like, I went to public school, by the way. But she was like, so you guys can't have boyfriends and girlfriends, right? She was asking me this in 3rd grade. So I was like, no. And then she's like, so how do you get married? So, I was a 3rd grader. I don't remember what I said, but, I kind of explained it to her. But just from another show of hands, too, how many of you went to public school? Okay, so a mass majority, too. And how many went to Islamic school? Okay. And how many people were homeschooled? Okay, so majority public school, some Islamic school. So obviously, aside from movies and all those things, alhamdulillah, you're in college now and you have this awesome sisterhood of MSA. And, Nermeen, you've done an awesome job, because I could definitely see, like you said, much more activity from the sisters this year than last year when I came. But again, I know that marriage is a more interesting topic than nutrition, alhamdulillah. But I'll explain to you how the two meet later on, though, inshallah. But, you've also been exposed to a lot of different relationships, that you've seen, whether in high school or middle school. I mean, they're starting in, elementary school now, so let's not get started on that. But, you might not think, for some of you it might be really clear that those things have an impact on you, but for some of you maybe not so much. But realize that everything we're exposed to has an impact on our heart, right? Assalamu alaikum. So when I was doing that du'a, that long du'a that we started out with, I'm just trying to remember what I said. There was something in here where I said something, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala help, protect or clean our hearts from, what we've been exposed to. We're told numerous times through, different things, hadith and the Quran, what enters our eyes, what we see, what we hear, that directly goes into our heart. So know that, everything you're exposed to does have an impact on you and can show up in future relationships, especially if you haven't really come to peace with it. So that's really important, And so let me finish my story too, inshallah. So she asked me that question, and, it was always, I'm sure for many of you going to public school, you realize that you're kind of like everyone else, but you're kind of not like everyone else. It's a very, it's an interesting dynamic, and I never really thought about it too much, I think, till maybe, senior year of high school, maybe, beginning of college, but I think around that time, as I started to get older, though, I almost developed this idea just because I was so, maybe didn't have that many Muslim friends other than, Muslim friends I was exposed to through weekend school. Things like that, really wasn't, didn't see the beauty of how Islam represents relationships, to a point where I almost thought it was kind of weird, just because you never really got exposed to that. And I don't know if any of you have ever felt that way, but I'm sure there are people who have. I won't ask you to raise your hands. But the idea there is, alhamdulillah, and even before, as Nermeen was giving my bio, I started Ambi Muslima, the magazine and the community, in July 2009. And this was actually, quite some time after I kind of reconnected with Islam on a really deep level. I'd say, probably my end of high school and first year or so of college, really, never lost my belief, but really, really disconnected from Islam. And, I really, thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for, while that's not the most desirable of things to happen, it really has shaped, who I am and what I'm able to do, and assalamu alaikum, and who I'm able to influence, and just the different perspective that I do have. And, and that was probably back in 2006 or so. And, when I kind of, came back to that though, and, while it wasn't related to, what we're talking about today, marriage and love, relationships, things like that, it was related to, not maybe feeling the confidence or not really seeing the beauty in Islam as it was practiced, and things like that. But, when I really started, Assalamu alaikum, to really re-examine certain things, you see how beautiful Islam is. For instance, the idea of how people get married within Islam and how, the things that we're supposed to look for and things like that, it's really beautiful. It's a lot more beautiful of being saved, the things that we see in the media. I want you to really think about it for a second. All those movies and all those things that we see where the woman just gets saved. Do you really want a man who's that stupid? Why would someone just want to save someone, without any sort of, back and forth compassion and mercy and acceptance? I mean, it's not deep, because the true depth, like we said in the dua, the true depth is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not, that's why you never really see what happens after the girl is saved, because there's nothing, And the true savior, of course, is Jannah, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May we be amongst them, inshallah. And number 5, which is a really important one, how many people here are graduating? Okay, how many are juniors? Okay, sophomores and freshmen. Okay, so we kind of are all over the place, but some of you are, headed into the real world. Real schedules where, Let's even fast forward to when, you're married and you're both busy. And I even got a question on Facebook from someone who was kind of, asking me to touch upon the idea of, not just marriage and how to find someone, things like that, but actually dealing with, busy schedules and busy life and stress and, all the things that you deal with. How do you really keep a marriage alive and grow it and sustain it Islamically with all those different things? One thing I will say, especially for those of you who are, are graduating, regardless of what you plan to do afterwards, I think it was like a week and a half ago or 2 weeks, alhamdulillah, I've been at Rutgers a lot. I got invited, alhamdulillah, to Rutgers, New Brunswick. They had an event mainly focused on like Muslim women, like graduating college, life after the MSA, like corporate world. As Nermeen said in my bio, I used to work in like the corporate and agency world before, I stopped to do what I'm doing now. But I do have a recording of that, and I'll collect email addresses later. But if you're interested in that, and that might also help a little bit more from like the balance perspective, and I speak about like family and stuff like that. It was a whole panel of like 6 really, really awesome women, but I only recorded my own because I, can't record theirs. But I could, but I wouldn't do that, alhamdulillah. But what I will touch upon is realize that real life and real schedules do exist. So a lot of times, people get married and, even Muslims, and, it's beautiful. They have a wonderful wedding and, they're really happy, but then, work gets in the way, then they have kids, and then, it just kind of fumbles, And the idea is life should actually become more beautiful as those things happen. But there's a couple of things that are problematic, that cause those things to happen. One, people are so stressed out, so extremely stressed out. And I know I'm talking to you guys when it's like finals week, and I'm sorry. I do have more good news for you though. Through my, when I started working with clients and stuff, and I realized it wasn't all just about like health and nutrition and fitness and stuff, and I realized it was also about like stress management, I wrote an ebook and an audiobook on like 10 different ways to manage stress. And randomly yesterday, because I don't forget about you people, even though my undergraduate days are way over, but I posted something on Facebook that I wanted to give away, 3 copies of those books, which I did yesterday. But again, I'll collect emails, and since there was such, people almost got mad at me because there was only 3 and there was more interest than there was, more than 3. Actually, I ended up giving away 4 just because one sister had a really good reason that she should get one. But, because I had such an interest, inshallah, today I'm actually going to put it up for like a name your own price type of thing, which means literally whatever you want. Which might help during finals and stuff, and it's really cool how it's formulated. I know you're probably thinking, well, I'm stressed out, I'm reading, why would I want to read a book? But it's actually formulated in a way where I promise it's really stress relieving. I go to it all the time, alhamdulillah, but, I'll share updates and things like that if you share your email address at the end. But the idea is that people really need to learn how to manage stress. As I said, when I, started really working with different women and realizing that there's so many different things, stress is a huge one. Even when you talk about diseases, we know that diseases or any type of hardship come through the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we also need to realize that we're responsible for ourselves, and lots of things that people are dealing with these days are preventable. If you go back 100 years, people didn't really have a lot of the conditions. I don't want to name specific things because I don't want to, hurt anyone's feelings if your family deals with this or things like that. But if you just go back 100 years ago, people weren't, obesity levels weren't this high. There are so many diseases that did not even exist, so it really, and being in the field that I'm in, I realized, though, yes, nutrition is important, fitness is important, but stress is so important. I mean, especially as women, it's so important just because, when your cortisol level, which is, like your stress levels are really high, it totally messes up your entire body. It messes up your ability to function. And if you think you're stressed now, I mean, imagine life, when you're married, And there's always stress, whether you're working, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, there's always stress, and the idea is not to get rid of it, that's impossible, but to manage it, and, to continue to pray, because there's no stress in Jannah, inshallah, may we all go there. But the idea with, real life and, real schedules is just realizing that, you have to work on your marriage. Even when things are really busy, meaning, there's kids to take care of, there are bills to pay, all those really, really boring things, marriage is not something, it has to be maintained. I'd compare it, sometimes people make analogies to a car and it needs maintenance and things like that, but that's lame. It's more important than that. It's really important. How many of you are familiar with Susie Ismail? Okay, I'm glad some people are. She's really awesome. She's from, I think she lives in Princeton. She's more Central Jersey. I'm Central Jersey, but, I love the North. I went to Montclair undergrad, but I love Rutgers too. But she wrote a book on Muslim divorce, and we actually reviewed it at MB Muslima within our marriage and love issue, and it was a really interesting book. I read it maybe 2 years ago or so, but I had one of my writers review it. And it's really interesting. I definitely recommend it. She writes a lot of good books, too. She wrote a book about Muslims in the workplace. Alhamdulillah, I actually published a chapter within that book. But it's very interesting just because she goes through many different, I think it's maybe 6 different stories where you get the male perspective and the female perspective, and they're based on actual Muslim marriages, and then afterwards you get a scholar who's kind of talking on both and, the more Islamic input on it. But you really realize that, while sometimes certain marriages just can't be saved, a lot of times it's not about the two people not being compatible. It's about life and stress, and you could be with the best person in the world, but when life hits you, this dunya isn't perfect, you're not going to have a good relationship because you don't know how to manage your emotions or your stress or different life situations. So that's really, really, that really needs to be driven home. And that goes into my next point too, just managing emotions. I think there are maybe 1 or 2 people here that are doing this, but about a month or 2 ago, I put out some information that I was doing a female hormone and emotion study, because I realized through my different clients and stuff, and even myself, my own journey and growth, that we could be super emotional as women, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created us that way, because we're more nurturing. We're able to feel things, we're more empathetic. We can see something that needs to be done and realize that it needs to be done, whereas a man is just is not going to realize that. And sometimes we get frustrated, but we shouldn't, because we should realize that we have to realize that men and women are different. We really do. And I'm going to talk about that more so towards the end. But I started a study with about a little less than 70 women that we're doing now for the next 2 months, to manage emotions, and I'm doing some research, concrete research. But it's really important that you know how to handle your emotions. Again, I keep saying, no amazing spouse is going to be able to help you with that. You need to know how to harness yourself. And, it's not about, a lot of times we think it's about willpower. I know some people during finals, I never understood this, but I could respect it. Some people during finals, deactivate their Facebook, which, I guess if you're always on it, it makes sense. But it's this idea that we think, or even, when I work with people, through my health coaching who want to lose weight, a lot of times people think it's about willpower. It's not about willpower. As human beings, we have very little willpower. Our willpower actually comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's really about just accepting yourself. If you are, emotional, being able to actually care for yourself, through the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, before you go crazy on someone because you're in this crazy emotional state, And the thing is, too, a lot of research, not just Islamically speaking, but even, secular knowledge, which, we could take from the good, especially when it's on marriage research and things like that, shows that a lot of times, the biggest gap is just that, women are too, men think women are maybe too emotional. And the thing is a lot of time, Men generally are very simple. Like they generally do want to do, what women want them to do. But a lot of times, women might not know how to express it. And I'm not trying to say that, a man is never at fault and it's, the woman who has to do everything. That's not what I'm saying. But I am saying that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave you a super special role. A really, really special role that you could literally transform different things. So many people want to travel the world and make a big difference, and that's important. People should do that, especially women. But just realize that your ability to really transform lives really lies within yourself. Not your external factors, but within yourself. And you'll find that when you really harness that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you everything and more. So number 8 is important, and it's, I keep saying that, they're all important. I know, I say that like every time, but it's true. It's the idea of shielding your heart. So we spoke about this a little bit in the beginning. We've been exposed, a lot of you said you went to public school, so you've been exposed to things. You have your MSA here, but I'm sure you still see stuff all the time on campus. It's really hard to even turn on like the Disney Channel without seeing really inappropriate things these days. It's all over the place. And the thing is that everything that enters our eyes enters our heart. That's really important. And, we can't control everything. I mean, literally, even for men, who have to control themselves too, it's very hard to drive on like 287 without seeing all these crazy ads of like women undressed and things like that. But, you need to shield your heart as much as possible. What happens is we get so exposed to it that it kind of becomes normalized through our eyes. It's sad, but it does, because we're humans and that's how we operate, where, we might not be consciously, attracted to that or like that, but at the same time, it does impact us. And, we kind of sometimes, when we get so used to seeing things that are just inappropriate, it's almost like they're normal. We expect them. It's almost like a shock when we see like what we're actually supposed to do. Like, subhanAllah, that exists. But just know that shielding your heart's really important, especially as, and a lot of you are, in the earlier stages as marriage is concerned, but it's just really important because it's not just going to impact your relationship with your spouse, inshallah, but your relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And it also goes back to number 3 of accepting yourself. We're bombarded with all these images of women that we try to emulate, and the thing is most of them, if not a lot of them, especially if you're talking about magazines and billboards, they're not real, aka they're photoshopped, meaning, busts are made bigger, waists are made smaller, eyes are made bigger. It's crazy, or even, just so many different things. The idea of changing how you look. I teach, if any of you are familiar with ISCJ, it's in Monmouth Junction in Princeton. I teach at their Saturday school, and I teach 9th graders, and we had a conversation that led one of my 9th grade students to ask about like plastic surgery and, stuff like that, and, where it kind of stands with Islam and stuff like that. But the point is that, we're bombarded as women with all these things to change yourself. Alhamdulillah, we have, hijab and different things to really protect us from that, and not all sisters, I like to make a distinction, because everyone is at a different place in their life, It's not always that easy as saying, well, she wears hijab, so she doesn't deal with these body image problems. She doesn't, so she does. It's not, You can't see what's in someone's heart. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made it really clear what we're asked to do and what we're not asked to do. But more importantly, it's where things are in our hearts. A lot of us that wear hijab, sometimes we have bigger body image problems because we try to maybe adapt our hijab to kind of fit different things, which, it's totally okay to, be happy and want to dress nice and wear nice colors. I love colors. I'm up here writing in pink just to see you guys. But the idea is, realize that you don't want to numb yourself. right? Because a lot of times, a big problem, even outside of Islam, a big problem is a lot of women spend so much time getting really dolled up in the public light, which I'm not going to say that's right or wrong, but just hear me out. A lot of time getting all dolled up in the public eye, let's talk about someone who's married and then goes home, everyone should be comfortable. I love sweats, I do. But, throws on sweats, washes her face off from makeup, and let's not even talk Muslim or non-Muslim, just in general. And the idea is that the public world was important for her beauty and the inside world isn't. And that's a big problem, and I'm not gonna, I'm not talking about fiqh because I'm not, an authority to talk about that, even though, certain things are clear. But it's just the idea that we've really numbed the idea of beauty, and appreciation. A lot of us don't spend time, and again, I'm not talking about being vain, but I'm talking about accepting yourself so that inshallah, if you have a daughter, she'll know how to accept herself. I'm talking about, there's a problem when you don't care how you look for yourself, but you care how you look for other people, especially strangers. And we know that our religion is one of, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says He's beautiful and He loves beauty, and, we should be out there representing ourselves really nicely. And I'll be the first to tell you that I used to totally cake my face up in makeup, several years ago. But the idea is that it's just really important for us to accept ourselves and realize that those things are going to tremendously impact our marriages. It's really important. Number 9 is one of my favorites. I guess they all are. I keep saying that, but it really is. And it's the idea of getting in tune with your intuition or your gut. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, along with all the crazy emotions that He gave women, we could be really crazy sometimes with the emotions that spark up within us, He gave us this intuition. He gave us that to prepare us for motherhood, right? And unfortunately, because so many of us are so stressed, we're juggling many roles, we have so many pressures, we have lost touch with that intuition. And it's so important. It's really important. Alongside, couple your intuition through your faith of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with your tawakkul or your reliance on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and really, you don't face problems. I mean, you face problems because problems are what this dunya is made of, but you approach things in a totally different way. And, really the only way that I could say to get in touch with your intuition is really get to know yourself. A lot of times women find it hard, maybe not so much now that you're in college because no one's really depending on you, but as you become a wife, as you become a mother, as people really depend on you, maybe compare it to that situation of your mother if you live with her. A lot of times women stop taking care of themselves, and I'm not just talking about physically, emotionally, mentally. How many mothers slave over a kitchen and never put anything in their mouth? The thing is that, just like when you're in an airplane, right? They tell the mother to put on the life vest before you put it on your child, because if you die, you're not saving your child. And everything happens, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the idea is that when you're at your best, not from a really greedy, non-Islamic, non-Tawheed, I just want to take care of me, myself, and I, not that perspective, but when you take care of yourself for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because you want to take care of other people, it's really, really, you change yourself so much. You go from draining yourself to actually appreciating yourself. Because a lot of mothers, especially the different mothers I work with, different wives, the people I come in contact with, they do so much for their families and their spouses, but they're very bitter. Even if they don't show it, they have this bitterness within them, and you can't achieve a true love. This world is not perfect, but, I truly believe, just as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, He puts rahmah and mawadda between the spouses, love and mercy, plus, He created spouses for the idea of tranquility or sakina, and that's really important, and that exists. So that whole fairy tale love, it doesn't exist, but something even better exists in this world. It does exist in this world. And, of course, the ultimate goal is, as we said before, and I'm going to repeat the dua, inshallah, may He allow our marriages, current or future, inshallah, to be a bridge to Him, not a self-destructing ship that's traveling away from Him. But the idea is, there will be problems. You're going to deal with problems, whether they're emotional problems, financial problems, problems with your children, problems with your spouse. But really being in tune with yourself and being accepting and really seeking that mawadda, that rahmah, is really important. Number 10 is one that's harder to achieve. These are all, these are things that are easier said than done. But this one I've found is harder in the sense that so far, everything I've probably said, you've probably heard, and you're like, yeah, that makes sense. I could see that happening. This one I would say is harder just because when I tell people this one, it's almost like it's hard to believe. And that's not hard to believe, but hard to actualize. Like you can't even see yourself maybe accomplishing this. And it's the idea of removing limits. So many people are limited in their thinking, in the way they do things. There are so many limits that we put on ourselves. People stress out because, they are worried they're not going to get a job, or they're worried that, unfortunately, limits a lot of times just because of the stresses. A lot of stresses come from like financial situations and things like that. But people put limits on what they can achieve, what they could do. There are no limits. The minute you put a limit on yourself, you put a limit on Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's will. And that's serious. You're not, saying anything bad about yourself. You're putting a limit on something where you have no job putting a limit on. And the thing is this brings such a sense of tawakkul and reliance, because there are really no limits. Anything is possible. We know this world is not perfect. It's not equipped to be perfect. But there's a beauty in that as well. There's a beauty in hardship. There's a beauty in adversity. There's a beauty in, inshallah, achieving Jannah after you've achieved those things. But the idea is not that you have to achieve them miserably. Two people could be going through really difficult things, About 2 months ago, I decided to start posting like a positive status on Facebook every single day. The one I actually posted today, I can't remember word for word, but it's the idea that, your external situations, forget about them for a second. You have a chance to choose. You can either choose if you're going to be grateful and have contentment, or you could choose if you're going to have anger and pity. And the thing is so many of us blame our external circumstances. That's so easy to do. Well, yeah, maybe your external circumstances are a big deal. You do have hardship. But it's so easy to just say that and kind of push it to the side and get lazy. Versus realizing that really your external circumstances, honestly, are like 10% of your outcome. 90% is all psychology. 90% is what you believe, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes things possible, right? Are things going to happen again? Like, the Red Sea being parted and things like that. Those are things that are prophetic and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, allowed to happen for, special chosen prophets and people, so we could have those stories and believe in them. And while that might not happen, and Allahu alam if it will or won't, but the idea is that idea of possibility still exists within every single one of you. And it's really important because, even if I go back to the idea of like managing stress, a lot of times people are stressed because they're thinking about limits, they're thinking about deadlines, they're thinking about things that do matter, because I'm not telling you to just, not go take your finals or like forget your deadlines, that's not what I'm talking about. But I'm just saying that, you spend so much time, I'm not even going to say you spend time, you waste so much time worrying on the future, on the past, and, not realizing that while you do that, that the present is kind of gone. Time check? That's okay. You could tell me. Okay, yeah, that's great, inshallah. Give me 1 second, ladies. I actually have a straw. This time I won't spill my water on myself. And it's pink, too. I told you I love pink. Okay. So, that's important. And then number 11, just because of time, I'm not going to go too much in detail because it's very linked to number 3. It's the idea of accepting other people. So number 3, I know some of you walked in late, but I am, recording this. I will not record the Q&A, but, or share the Q&A rather. But, if you came in late or whatever, I'll be posting this and sharing this, and I'll be collecting emails later to share it, inshallah. But number 3, I spoke a lot about the idea of accepting yourself. If you don't accept yourself, you're not going to accept any other people. at all, your spouse, your children, whoever. And this is hard because a lot of us come from cultures that, are very loving, have a lot of hospitality, have a lot of beautiful. I'll speak on what I know best. Like I said, I'm Egyptian. Awesome people, beautiful, very, wonderful, take care of other people, but have a really hard time being grateful. I hate to say that, and if I'm offending anyone, but it's the truth. And I can't speak on a large scale, but I can speak on, patterns that I've seen in many different things. And I'll move into the point of losing the idea of comparison. A lot of our cultures compare people all the time. When I told you in 2006, I really, almost, on a very large degree disconnected from Islam. Of course, that comes from me. And of course I was young and things like that. And it wasn't that I lost my faith, but, in terms of not keeping up with the prayers, not having, a deep connection with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it more so came from the fact that I realized, well, am I praying for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or am I praying to make my parents happy? And things like that. And then really, gaining that conviction, on my own belief and in my own way through Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was really strong. But one thing that really, I guess, even though, I'm responsible for my own actions, I can't blame anyone else, but one thing that really I think is sad within our communities is there's so much comparison. So much comparison. I was just speaking to a friend yesterday who, graduated, last May, and, she's, still, alhamdulillah, keeping up with her prayers and stuff, but kind of dealing with, the post-MSA blues, which a lot of people deal with, and, almost doesn't want to go to the masjid just because she's sick of being asked, when is she going to get married? Why hasn't she found a job? Why is so-and-so doing this? It's just, and when I say, I really don't want to offend anyone. When I say, for example, Egyptians or Arabs aren't grateful, I don't mean they're not grateful people. They are grateful people, but the problem is they're stuck in the whole perfection trap. A lot of our cultures are stuck in that perfection trap. You got married, great. When are you having a baby? You got a baby, great. When is number 2 coming along? And that is not the way of our sunnah. The way of our sunnah is to be present in the current moment. So much of the drama or sadness or problems that we experience, they're not real. They're like these concocted things in our brain that come to us because, we are so busy thinking about what might possibly happen rather than dealing with what's real. And I guess before we go to Q&A, in my last few minutes, I just want to speak about the importance of the idea that men are different than women. Now I'm going to talk more so in terms of what is in your power, right? So it's going to sound like a lot of it is on your shoulders. That's not the idea. The point I'm trying to drill home is you're responsible for you. So I'm going to talk to you more about your psychology as a woman. Briefly explain things as men. This doesn't mean that they don't have responsibilities. They have a lot of responsibilities, but you're not in control of it. A lot of women, especially some of the women, that I work with and stuff, and that are my clients and stuff, that are really stressed out, a lot of times they put stress on themselves that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't put on themselves. So, I realize now in the current economy, it's really tough for a lot of brothers to support a family. And as women who received an education and want to do things in the world, we're allowed to work and we're allowed to do many different things. But, a lot of households and a lot of different situations, it's almost like the wife is holding things up, both financially and both from the mother perspective, to a very large degree. And, sometimes it's from circumstance, but other times I would really, and again, my goal is not to, what's the word I'm looking for? Offend, thank you. Offend anyone. But my goal is just to really be real on, information I've seen based on, many different demographics, many different things, and, stuff I'm actually doing concrete research on now. But a lot of times, it's almost like with the whole women's movement, and I'll talk about the Western woman movement, not the, Islam gave us these rights, 1400 plus years ago. But the Western movement where, women started working, and I'm all for women working. I'm actually totally for women becoming entrepreneurs. One of the big reasons I left my corporate job, there are many different reasons, minus realizing the desk job life, regardless of promotions and things like that, is not my cup of tea, but really realizing what do I want my life to look like when I'm a mother, inshallah, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses me with that, things like that, to truly be a really good wife, things like that. And I think it's a really good balance because, it's really easy in college, and trust me, as I was saying, I was the total, perfectionist, the stressor, the go-getter, things like that, and I still accomplish things, alhamdulillah, for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I hope, but in a totally different light, in a totally different way that's much more effective now. But the idea is, if you would have asked me that when I was, in college, undergrad, I would have never told you that. I would have, if possible financially, that I'd, definitely want to be, a stay-at-home mom if it's possible, or things like that. And that doesn't work for everyone, but the thing is that you need to realize that it's not that easy. For instance, my mother has been working full-time her whole life, more so for circumstantial reasons than, wanting to. But, she's also a full-time mother, and I'm sure many of you have that too as well. And for a lot of our parents, it's circumstantial, but a lot of us have opportunities now between the internet, between people who are able to work from home, freelancing, jobs that are flexible. I want you to realize that this whole superwoman role that women have taken on, to a certain degree, women should be, stable within themselves. Allahu alam, you could get married, but your husband could pass away. You need to know how to take care of yourself. But, plus there is also a need of fulfillment and creativity. Sometimes some moms, I know and work with moms that are just stay at home. They have no friends. They never leave the house. They don't do any activities. And they're really depressed because they need interaction other than just being in their homes. That's not healthy either. But there's a balance between that, right? It's not all or nothing. A lot of times we look at things all or nothing. But it's really important, because it's really easy to be an undergrad and kind of have these ideas of what you're going to do. But when push comes to shove, when you have these daily schedules, the real schedules I talked of before, it's real life and it's hard to manage those things. So really think about what kind of lifestyle you want. And where I'll end before I, inshallah, we do Q&A, is there's a really good quote. I don't know who said it. I saw it yesterday. I should have quoted them, but you can Google it. You can find anything on Google. And it's the idea that your beginning, don't compare your beginnings to another person's middle. So I like this for a couple of reasons. One, a lot of times people do one of two things. They see someone who's accomplished a lot, and they kind of get, well, why does that person have that? I want that. Or they get scared, like, I could never do that. Or they kind of, take where they are now, and they don't know how to compare it to someone else's. And the idea here is that you should look to other people's accomplishments, goals, good things, both dunya and more so, their deen and akhlaq and what they've accomplished there. That's what's really going to matter on that day, where no one will have shade except for the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the idea is only look to other people to get inspiration. But the idea is that you need to meet yourself where you are. So if right now you are, in no place or position to get married, don't go daydreaming and, kill yourself the rest of the day today thinking about all the different things we spoke about if it doesn't apply to you. You have to be real to yourself, meet yourself where you are at this current stage in your life, and realize that you just have to really be real with your situation. Because we spoke on a wide spectrum of things that I think every single point, inshallah, can apply to you, but maybe not at this point in your life, and don't go stressing out because it doesn't apply to you right now, but realize you have to meet yourself where you are. And, I didn't speak about it too much because it's a younger crowd, but, not everybody, gets married. Kind of married, not marriage, but married. Like I said in the dua, realize that marriage is a means, not an end. The only end is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you need lots of lectures on that, go listen to Yasmin Essa. It's all she talks about, and it's really awesome, as I'm sure you know. But also realize that, marriage, you're all familiar with the hadith that marriage is half of our deen. That doesn't mean that you get married and you've completed half of your deen. It's because when you get married, that person has an impact on, do you live a life where you use riba? How do you raise your children? Your spouse becomes crucial in how you live your life towards Allah. That's why it's half your deen, and it's a really great way to accomplish that, inshallah. And really, there's no relationship that's more beautiful than the one that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has defined for us. And jazakallah khair, and I look forward to your questions, inshallah. I think they're passing out note cards right now. Okay. Should I wait till set up? Okay, so if you're still writing questions, pass them up. We only have, a little bit of time for questions, but I have some really awesome ones. I'm going to answer them as best as I can within the time. But, just know that I'm keeping these, through, MB Muslima or different things. I can't say too much about it, but inshallah soon I'm starting like this daily podcast type of thing, but I'll mention, I'll talk about these things and realize that they are, because a lot of these are things that literally take a whole lecture just to answer. And there'll be a sign-up sheet to put your email address on when you're leaving if you want to stay up to date. Or maybe we should actually pass it around because there might be a class coming in here. Give me 1 second. Yeah, go ahead.
Guys, while you're doing the sign-up sheet, if you guys know that throughout the entire year or semester, we've been doing a raffle, and the idea of the raffle is that every single meeting there was a raffle given out. I think we did it once or twice, just because depending on the meeting. So, and also along with that, we were taking our raffle throughout the entire semester that for every girl, for every time she participated in a sisters event, she would get her name put into a raffle towards the end of the semester, now, one time. So say, for example, you came to 2 events, you get your name put in twice to win this raffle. So I've been keeping track of who's been coming, and I put the raffle into a website that randomly picked one, and we have our winner. Can I find out? Okay, so the winner, based on random selection, was Kayla. Thank you, guys. Okay, and then 2 more Alright, you guys, today at 4 o'clock, NGIT is having an event with this one. He was like the ex-president of our MSA. It's today at 4 o'clock, Campus Center, room 240 if you're interested in going. And also, next week, we're having a de-stress ice cream type thing. So come make your own ice cream sundae, right before finals. Super free. Yeah, super free. We're not going to be charged. So yeah, so that's it. And that's basically it, guys. Good luck on the finals. Make sure you make lots of dot. That's pretty helpful for everybody else. And that's great.
Okay, jazakallah khair, and that's awesome too. Are you the one that posted that on Facebook yesterday?
The question?
Yeah. Okay, I recognize the name. Sorry, I couldn't answer you till early this morning. Okay, and I am passing that around. There's a spot for your name, email, if you want to be up to date. As you've noticed from my own experiences that I've shared you, I'm kind of all over the place. So if you want to be up to date on that, you could sign there. So someone asked how do you know that you're choosing the right spouse? What if istikhara is not enough? So I think this is a really good question. I think, if I go back to number 9 of getting in tune with your intuition, I think it's really important for people to really know themselves. So, if anyone ever visits the MB Muslima YouTube page, I did a really good interview with Yasmin Essa maybe like a year ago, and she talks, it's not about marriage, it's an interview on her, but she talks about the idea of istikhara and how people kind of have this deluded idea that once you do istikhara, the answer will be put right in front of you. That's not how it works. And, she explains it better if you just want, a better explanation of istikhara in general. But I think it's very easy to know, when you're in touch with yourself. For instance, I speak to people who are totally stressed out because they're going to medical school. When they think of medical school, they get this pit in their stomach that they just want to pass out, but they do it because of pressures and family expectations and things like that versus, something that they love that lights them up, they kind of push to the side because it's not practical or whatever the case may be. So I really urge you to just, how do you really feel about it? And sometimes it can be a practical question, like you just don't know enough about the brother. Well, find out more. Islam gives you the ability to, in a way that's through your family, if you don't have parent representatives, you can use, there are many imams that help out and things like that, but within the right manner, with a way that your dignity is not being compromised. Get to know the brother. Ask the important questions. Focus more on the actual marriage. Too many people focus on the wedding. I mean, yeah, you can have a nice wedding, but who cares if your marriage sucks? Which, excuse me for my words, but so many people have these awesome weddings and then they're divorced 2 months later. They haven't even paid off the wedding and they're not married anymore. That's a problem, and it's not across the board, but I will say that a lot of people lose the happiness. Honestly, it's not about the wedding. It's not. And you can enjoy things. I don't want to take that away from you, but realize that, keep your priorities straight. And realize that compatibility is important. Personality is important. Deen is important. The first 3 things I said, deen, akhlaq, personality, compatibility, and yes, physical appearance too, but that's like an afterthought. But, how do you feel? Can you talk? Is this someone you could talk to and not get bored of talking to? Is it someone who has, talk about what you want? Is it someone who shares, not the same views as you, but similar views on how you want to live your life? Are you flexible to relocation? Some people get engaged, and then they break their engagement off. And I've had friends that have done this, and the reason they break off their engagement is because, he doesn't want her to work and she wants to work. I'm glad, they didn't get married before that, but that's something you could have figured out before you got engaged. A lot of times people are kind of, because we have this fantasy la la land, oh, he's nice looking, or oh, mashallah, he gives good lectures. No, are you guys compatible? It's so important. Honestly, your spouse needs to be your best friend. Without that, they need to be your best friend. At the same time, you should have a really close female friend because, a lot of times with certain emotional things, males are just not going to get certain things, and you need to have that. It doesn't mean that they don't care. Kind of being on my own journey of really harnessing my own emotions and really through my own engagement period and, getting to know my fiance, who's, mashallah, a really good brother, but realizing that it's so important. Who you marry needs to be your best friend, and you need to have similar interests. You don't need to agree on everything, but you need to have the same philosophy. Number 2, there was another question there. How do you get over your fears of being hurt? This is a really good question that requires a lot of time that I don't have, but I'm going to answer it in a powerful yet short way. And again, I'll touch upon these things through I always take my feedback. Honestly, I promise. If your email is on there and you keep up to me, you'll see your concerns brought up again. I mean, even when I teach my 9th graders, I have them grade me at the end of every class just because if I'm talking about something and it's not relevant to you, then I'm wasting my time. But getting over your fears of being hurt. So I started off this lecture talking about, asking you how many of you maybe didn't have the best, your parents are not, madly in love with each other. There's a lot of arguing. There's, not a great environment, even though maybe they're wonderful people. I shared that my parents separately are wonderful people. They strive for their family only, but they have a lot of problems between them because the way people got married in that time, it was based upon, knowing families and, classes and things like that. It wasn't based on personality. Personality is really important. Of course, if din and akhlaq is there, but don't let relationships you've seen, whether it's your family or anyone close to you, their relationships do not dictate your relationships. And their fears, you should not fear anything but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I said an ayah at the end of the dua in the beginning. I didn't translate it. I apologize. It was ثُمَّ إِنَّكَ بَعْدَ ذَلِكَ لَمَيْتُونَ. Actually, I did translate it. I don't apologize now that I remember. But it's verily after this you're going to die. Seriously, I painted this on my wall. Don't believe me? Go add me on Facebook. I posted it there. I painted this ayah on my wall because you should not have fear or anxiety over anything but death. You could die after you walk out of this room. I hope that doesn't happen. But, if it does, that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala willed for. But the idea is there's nothing to be scared of. All emotions could be narrowed down to two major emotions, love and fear. Everything falls under love and fear, and you should only fear Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you should love openly. If you have fear, it might mean that at one point in your life you loved, openly, maybe not in a romantic way, but you kind of, even if it wasn't romantic, you kind of exposed your true self. You gave it your all, but you were kind of turned away or criticized or, just told that that's not okay. And the idea is just let go of your fears. Trust Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's not an Islamic saying, but what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. It's very true. We have like 3 minutes. I have a couple questions. Should I go through one more? What is the best method to approach your parents when you have found someone compatible? I would say approach your parents with respect. Our generation is awesome because a lot of us are closer to the deen at our young age than our parents were. They grew up in religious settings. They didn't necessarily engage in the haram, but they weren't as spiritually active as us, right? So sometimes, in this whole, really being tight with the MSA and hearing this awesome lecture and getting an iman boost, we go to our parents when we're immature and, don't have the right akhlaq, and we almost, it makes them feel like we know more than them, when we start saying things. So go to them with respect. Be really patient. Yes?
I just have another question after you're done with that.
Okay. If we have time, I'll try to answer. If not, again, I'll, definitely do things through other ways. But the way I'll answer this is just realize if you're truly set on someone and it's for the right reasons, you need patience. Again, my own fiance is a convert. It was a very long process, even just to get engaged. And, the only reason we've been engaged longer than most is because, like I said, I was a little ahead in my studies and things like that, but, he's doing his student teaching, so inshallah, it'll be soon for us, make dua, but, other than that, the whole, my parents accepting that, and, I shared the story of what my father had said, really beautiful, but it was still very hard for him, and that's a more extreme situation, but just be kind with your parents, be patient. If something is, just make sure you're not being patient on something that's not real or sustainable too. How do you surpass cultural expectations to focus solely on religious aspects? It's important to note, that culture, we don't need to get rid of culture to do things correctly Islamically. Culture is within Islam. The Prophet ﷺ, he used to respect other cultures. When he traveled to different places, he wore their dress, of course, through his guidelines of modesty and adapted them and things like that. But at the same time, he did not let culture, unfortunately, a lot of our parents sometimes pick culture over this. Like wanting an enormous wedding or wanting you to only marry one person, or for some people, or one person of one nationality. For some cultures, it's even harder. They want someone to marry someone from the same tribe or whatever the case may be. Be patient, be with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and, express yourself. I mean, most parents, love you, and want the best for you. And, if they see that you're level-headed, you're not just coming at them through emotion or this, crazy head over heels, fake love type of thing. If they see you're serious, most parents will adjust. It's not easy. If you're trying to do something like that, I think, multicultural marriages and all that, I think they're really awesome. But, know that it's extra work if you're trying to do that, especially if your parents are more traditional. But it's possible. It's very possible.